This is my stunning PC build which sits at the heart of my main setup, and this is where I've made and edited all of my content for the past 3 years. It's appeared in tons of videos and has been a major part of both my previous studio and my current one. But all good things must come to an end, and today we're going to be saying goodbye to the PC we all know and love because it's finally time to replace it with something newer and a lot more powerful. I've been planning this build for a year now, so it's finally time to get it done. Let's get into it. So the editing PC is long overdue an upgrade. I first put this together about 3 years ago now, and it's lasted out very nicely, but it's beginning to show its age a bit, and with it being the system I use to edit all my content, I need it to be in tip-top shape to make my life easier. So I've teamed up with some epic brands who kindly sent over some upgrades to really make this into a cracking new build. If you can't remember, the current PC is rocking an Intel i7-12700K CPU, ROG Strix RTX 3080 graphics card, 32GB of Corsair DDR4 RAM, ROG Strix B660A motherboard, 4TB of SSD storage, NZXT Kraken Z73 cooler, Lian SL120 V2 fans and V2 Strimer cables, a 750W Corsair power supply, this 7-inch screen from VyralTeq, and finally the Lian O11 Evo case. And honestly, I really do love this PC build and I am going to miss it a lot. But now let's take a look at the parts I'm going to be using for the new PC. The CPU is being upgraded to an i9-14900K, and that is going to pair with this Aero RTX 4080 Super graphics card. You may have briefly seen this appear in my gaming PC a few months back, and I also used the Aero 4070 Ti in there for a long time, so I'm a big fan of these cards. For RAM, we're switching up to 96GB of DDR5 Corsair Dominator, which is going to be very nice. Then for storage, I have this 4TB SSD from Crucial, and I was going to add another 4TB SSD from WD Black, which I bought months ago ready for the build, but apparently I took it out of the box and now I don't know where it is. Fortunately, Crucial actually saw a TikTok I did this week where I mentioned this, and they offered to send me another SSD, so I'll add that at a later time. For the motherboard, I've gone with the ROG Strix Z790A, which looks super clean and has a bunch of features to make building a lot easier. For the cooler, you guys know I love a good Kraken AIO, as I have one in both of my current PC builds, and this is the completely overhauled NZXT Kraken Elite 360, which is a massive change over the one I currently use. For the fans, these are really cool. They're Lian's brand new fully wireless LCD fans, which look epic and will make building so much easier without any cables. We also have the new wireless Strimer cables to go with them too. Cableless cables sounds like a very interesting concept. To power it all, we have the 2024 Corsair RM1000x power supply, which has had a nice revamp. And finally, I wasn't going to change case because I love my O11 Evo and I was just going to build all of this in the same case, but I ended up changing my mind, so the O11 Evo is going to be replaced with the O11 Vision instead. We'll talk about why I changed my mind when we unbox that in a minute. But there we go, that's all of the new parts I'm going to be using. It's going to be an incredible build and I'm very excited to get to work. Now let's get the O11 Vision Case out of the box and take a quick look at why I've chosen it for this build. So as you can see, the Vision is made up of 3 glass panels on the front, side and top. And obviously this allows you to get a much better view of all of the components inside your PC. I wasn't actually sure what to think of it when it first got released, but it's grown on me over time and that's why I've chosen it for this build. They've also removed the bezels from the edges of the glass panels so you get this unobstructed panoramic view of your PC. Not only does it look great, but you can also remove all of the glass panels so that it is so much easier to build in than a lot of other cases. Having all this open space will be so much easier to put components like the motherboard and cooler inside without having to reach into a confined space. Honestly, brands are finding so many new ways to make building PCs easier these days, and I'm all here for it. They've also made managing and hiding cables easier by having this section that acts like an access door to the back of your PC. And I also love this feature that the Evo had too, where you can remove this bracket, which is going to make installing the cooler for me so much easier. You can also remove and adjust the height of the motherboard mount so you can customize your build further. As a bonus, I always love it when a brand includes one of these to hold and divide up all your screws. So there's just a little teaser of the case I'm going to be using. Now let's get building this PC. So to get things kicked off, first we need to take our ROG Strix Z790A motherboard out of the box, and man, I really do like the design of this motherboard. I was tempted to get one with a white PCB as well, but this one had the most features, so it was a bit of a compromise between the two. Now we can get our Intel i9-14900K CPU installed, and there's just something so satisfying about unboxing one of these flagship Intel CPUs. Now this is the part of the build that a lot of first timers get really nervous about, but honestly it is super easy to do. Unless you're basically throwing the CPU into the socket, it's highly unlikely you're going to damage anything or bend any pins. Next up is the 96GB of Corsair Dominator DDR5 RAM, and I know it's way more than I need, but at least I know that the PC will be able to handle anything I throw at it. And now finally we can install the 4TB M.2 SSD from Crucial, and as I say, I am going to be installing more storage at a later point, I just haven't got it yet. Now that I've got the CPU, RAM and SSD installed into the motherboard, it's time to put the entire assembly into the case. As I mentioned earlier, you can take off all of the glass panels on the O11 Vision, so that's going to make installation a lot easier. So now I can simply slide the motherboard in and screw it into place. And there we go then, the motherboard is in, the build is off and running, and to be fair, it's already off to a good start. Next up, it's time to install the new Kraken Elite cooler, and this one is a complete overhaul over the previous model. I feel like I use Kraken coolers in all my builds, but I really like them, and this one really caught my eye. It has an NZXT turbine pump rather than ASUS, and features a 2.72-inch IPS LCD screen over the old 2.36-inch regular LCD. As you can see, the pump head looks very different with much thinner bezels. It also has all new tubing, and the connector is actually on the radiator now instead of the pump. They've also made installing the fans so much simpler by combining them into this single frame, which then just screws on with 4 screws in each corner, and I think this is a brilliant idea, although I won't be using these in this build. Instead, I'm going to be using these, the new wireless LCD fans from Lian. Wireless is a bit of a stretch as they do require a power cable still, but they are controlled via a wireless receiver rather than a wired hub like older versions. Each fan has an LCD screen in the middle, and they are still daisy chainable for easier installation. They're pricey, but still some of my favorite fans on the market. Now we need to get the fans installed onto the cooler. Because I'm actually going to be side mounting the radiator here, but with the radiator behind this bracket and the fans on the front, I need to remove this and install it onto the cooler first. Fortunately, Lian has made this super easy to do. So now we can add the bracket onto the radiator, then install the fans on top and screw them into place. Another cool feature with the new version of these fans is the ability to hide the screws with these rubber covers. With that all put together, we can install the cooler assembly back into the case. At this point, I went to install the retention bracket, but realized that with this case, you can't get to the motherboard once it's installed. Fortunately, the entire motherboard bracket is removable, so I can unscrew it to put the retention bracket behind, and then once that's in place, simply reattach the motherboard unit to the case and we're good to go. Now we can screw in the 4 standoffs for the AIO pump head in the Intel configuration, and then carefully install the pump onto the CPU, taking care to slowly tighten each thumb screw bit by bit and not too tightly that it damages the socket or processor. Finally, we can connect the cables, and as mentioned, the connector now plugs into the radiator instead of the pump, and with all of that plugged in, the cooler is now fully installed. The next job is to add the intake fans to the bottom of the case. For this, we have more of Lian's wireless LCD fans, but these ones are reverse blade. And that means I can set these fans to intake without sacrificing aesthetics. So let's get the fans clicked together, ready to go. Then we can unscrew and remove the bracket from the bottom of the case and screw it onto the fans themselves for easier installation. And now we can add the whole thing back into the case and secure it with the 2 screws. Now we can bring in our RM1000X power supply, which again has had a 2024 redesign and features a bunch of improvements and upgrades. So let's get that slotted into the back of the case and then tighten the 4 screws on the back. Now comes one of the more annoying parts of any build, plugging in all the fiddly front panel cables and connectors. And there we go, the build is coming along really nicely. I'm really happy with the way it's looking, but now it's time to make it look even better. And that's because it's time to bring in our beautiful Aero RTX 4080 Super graphics card. These Aero cards are some of the cleanest looking GPUs out there, and it is going to look so good in this PC. Before we can install it though, we need to take the vertical bracket out of my old PC to use in this one. This is actually a Lian bracket, so it is perfect to use in this case. With the vertical bracket installed, we can plug in the riser cable to the motherboard, and now let's bring in the graphics card and carefully click it into place. With that now in, straight away this build is looking so nice. I love it when you get the first glimpse of basically how the final build will look. Before we can use it though, we need to install our power cables for the CPU, motherboard and GPU, and for the latter we have these new wireless Strimer cables from Lian. Like with the fans, these are now controlled with the wireless receiver rather than a wired hub in the back, so cable management is so much easier as there is far less clutter. Unfortunately, I couldn't install the GPU cable because the connector's not compatible with where it's located on this GPU. But with the motherboard cable installed and ready to go, there is just one more thing that's missing. I'm going to remove the 7-inch IPS monitor from my old PC and install it into the new one. This particular kit is from VyralTeq and I love the way I can use it to showcase cool animated wallpapers in the back of my PC. So together with the cooler and fans, this PC literally has 8 screens in it, which is absolutely crazy. The PC itself is basically ready to go, so it's time to reassemble the case and put all of the panels back together. But before we fully close it up, let's not forget to peel the cover off the cooler screen before the super satisfying part of the build. And there we go, the build is now finished and ready to go, and wow, even before turning it on, this is an absolute thing of beauty. I loved how my old PC looked, and in the back of my mind whilst building this, I was still a bit worried how it would look compared to the old one, but I'm super happy with the way it turned out. But of course, we're not done yet as it's time for the moment of truth, putting it in the setup and seeing if it boots. And it didn't. Thankfully, the only issue was that the GPU cable was ever so slightly loose in the PSU, so the graphics card wasn't getting enough power, but once I pushed it in properly, everything was all good. And just look at the final result here. This PC looks better than I could have even imagined. The new parts look so clean, especially the new Kraken cooler and LCD fans, and that GPU, perfection. I'm over the moon with how this has turned out, and not only does it look amazing, but it's going to perform like an absolute dream compared to my old one. It was definitely worth the wait for this build. So what do you guys think? Do you like the new PC? Let me know down in the comments what your thoughts are. I'm interested to look through them all. And of course, if you enjoyed today's video, then please make sure to drop a like to show the algorithm. And if you want to see more content like this, then make sure you're subbed to the channel. I've got some more epic videos on the way, including a huge studio makeover later this month, so you won't want to miss it. But for now, have a great week and I'll catch you all in the next video. See you later.